Welcome to the Armored Soil Podcast, brought to you by the Renville SWCD, where we look to bring real-life information on all things sustainable resources and agriculture. We believe that soil is invaluable and that protecting our soil is the key to sustaining all aspects of life. Please like and subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. The information you will hear about is personal experience and is no way economic or agronomic advice. If you are interested in implementing these practices or techniques you hear about, we recommend you reach out to your agronomist and our CS office or local conservation district for ways to work them into your operation. For more information about our liability or podcast, please visit our website at renvilleswcd.com.
Welcome to the Armored Soil Podcast. Today, we have with us TJ Kartes from Saddle Butte Seed, and I'm joining you as your host, Holly Hatlewick with the Renville Soil and Water. Welcome, TJ.
Thank you, Holly. I really appreciate you guys having me on here today.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your background, TJ, for the listeners that aren't familiar with you.
So I grew up in Blooming Prairie, Minnesota, which is southern part of the state. I always say we're a couple big watersheds start. We're not far from where the Cedar or the Straight River starts, which is a huge watershed that goes to the Mississippi, and then the Cedar or the Straight into the Cannon, pardon me, and then the Cedar, which starts just outside of Blooming, goes all the way down into Iowa and Missouri. So we are like the headwaters of a couple major watersheds. So years ago, we got very interested in conservation. My uncle did on the farm, and we started chisel plowing back in the 70s. We started ridge tilling in the 80s. We did all the stuff that everybody said wouldn't work, can't make it work, and we seemed to make it all work. So I went off to college in the 80s. I was really interested in conservation, but it wasn't really much of a topic at that point. I thought if we chisel plowed everything, we were fine. Moldboard plowing is still acceptable. I realized as we went forwards that we needed to make more changes. So I got really interested in this sustainable, regenerative, whatever practice you want to talk about or put a word to it. I really believe that holding the water in place, keeping the nutrients in place, keeping the soil in place is a big part of our responsibility as landowners and industry people in this community. So spinning forwards, I started working in the conservation world probably 25 years ago with some smaller companies, and then went work for a national company out of Oregon. So I cover 5 states in the upper Midwest. So I cover Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, where cover crops shouldn't work because they're too far north, or too cold, or too wet. I tell everybody, when I took agronomy classes, I didn't take the 2 class, but somewhere along the line there was a 2 class because everybody else took that class, and it's always too something. Too wet, too dry, too cold, too late in the year. There's 2s always involved, and I didn't get that class, and most agronomy people I work with didn't get it either.
That's fantastic. I also did not have the 2 class, so that's interesting. I didn't even know it was in the curriculum. So maybe it's probably good that neither of us had that course, right?
I didn't know it was there, but obviously everybody else in ag took it somewhere because they use it a lot. And I keep thinking, man, I should have sat through that thing just to understand why they're using that all the time.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, obviously this is the space you're in now, right? Cover crops, and people that know you cover a huge area, like you said, and you're really into trying new things and exploring ideas and pushing the envelope. So why should farmers consider diversification in their cover crop? Why should farmers consider diversification in cover crops? I know people are trying them in different ways, and we talk about cover crops at different seasons of the growing season, all of that. So I don't want to get into the definition of what is a cover crop, but really, why should they think about that diversification?
So we talk about this all the time. We don't just raise one crop out here. I guess some of us do. Some guys just raise corn on corn on corn. But the diversity of our cropping rotations need to be the diversity of our cover crop rotations too. And the beauty of it in the state of Minnesota, because we have such variation of crops, we have sugar beets in the north, which is a tuber plant. They're already raising tuber cover crops as a row crop. Down here in my world at one time, we had the Hollandale people that raised a lot of potatoes and carrots. They're raising with carrots a tuber cover crop. They didn't need so much specific mixes of they needed more tubers out there. They needed more fibrous root networks. So as we go into this, we look at it and say, okay, what is your cropping system you're raising? So if you're raising corn and soybeans, 50-50 or 60-40, whatever you do, you need grasses will always work first in this world. We know that. Cereal rye, winter triticale are always going to work. Trying to get the brassicas implemented into those systems is really huge. Legumes, I feel, can be worked into it, but we're already every other year we're maybe raising a legume crop anyway. So do we need that diversity? The piece we don't raise in this system is a tuber crop, unless you're raising beets or carrots or something like that. So the tuber crops, like the radishes and the kale and the rapeseed and stuff like that, the turnips, that root network gives us a whole different network of soil biology that we're trying to work through the system. The part that you look at is how much growth do we need to make these work. So in our world where it gets cold and it cools down, and we're definitely feeling it right now. It's cold out there today again.
Negative 18 on my way to work this morning.
Yeah, we didn't have winter last year. We're making up for every ounce of what we got last year this year. It's Mother Nature saying, well, guess what? You wanted winter? Here's winter. We'll give you a little snow, but we're going to freeze you out, which is good. Gets rid of the bugs. And so we need to get those tuber crops in there. Do we need massive growth out of them? I don't believe so. But as we pick those species, we've got to realize how long they're going to grow in the fall. So we try to pick the coldest season climate ones we can utilize. The nice, interesting part that's come out of NDSU in the last few years and University of Minnesota Forever Green program is winter camelina. Now we have a true overwintering brassica that will give you a tuber style plant. And I really think that's something we need in these mixes to get more of the tuber style plants into our grass mixes. If you look at what the grassland prairies were back before we came here, is they had 80-90% grass and they had tuber plants in there and legumes in there. So that was Mother Nature's natural mix. We need to mimic that somehow and try to get those plants growing as much as physically possible. In our shorter season, the farther north you go, we got to get them applied sooner. But we don't always monoculture our cropping systems. We need to not monoculture our cover crop system. So if we're raising legumes every other year, not saying we shouldn't keep trying to get legumes in the mix, they've just been a little bit tougher to get established. But the brassicas, the tuber style plants, are what we really need to get in our mixes. So I 100% believe in getting like rye, cereal rye, winter triticale, you get with winter camelina, kale products, something like that. Something that's going to live really long in the fall, possibly be there next spring. Rapeseed is overwintered for us. The thing I worry about rapeseed, the farther north you go, in Minnesota, there's canola growing in northern Minnesota and very western Minnesota. We have to watch growers that are going to raise canola to stay away from like a rapeseed because they're cousins. And we just don't want cross-pollination contamination issues that way. So if you're doing that plant, then we have to talk about different species that you maybe need to use there. Flax is another one that we need to look at getting more into our mixes. It lives way late in the fall, 14 degrees for 20-some, 30-some hours. Sometimes it overwinters. And it's an actual mycorrhizal fungi host out of a brassica plant. So I think there's a lot of things we can do in Minnesota yet to get multi-mixes out there. They don't have to be extravagant. I hear guys talk about this all the time. 30-way mixes. Yeah. 30-way mixes. Wonderful. But what are you getting out of 30-way? I told that in a meeting one time. I said, you get 30 things out there, you don't know what 28 of them look like anyways. Let's just stick to a couple, 3 to start with. And then the more advanced you get, the more we'll add more stuff to it. But let's get you working the right way right off the bat with a couple, 3 things to make it work. In my fall mixes, I try to tag the grasses together. I love oats in every mix I do in the fall. If it's before October 1st, south of 94, I make sure I get 10 to 12 pounds of oats in every mix. It really helps fumigate the soil. It sucks out all the heavy metals. It's kind of like it's not a poor man's lime. That's what some people call it, but it kind of releases different nutrients out of the soil to help balance the pH. It helps the cereals look better the next spring. So I really like it. Grows fast. So fly on jobs, early seeding. I love to get 10, even 20 pounds of oats out there with the brassicas and the rye or triticale. And every time I do that, I have better rye and trit the next spring. So I really love getting oats in those mixes. Trying to get a legume in front of corn from beans. Vetches have been okay if we can get them in early enough. Like I'm talking like the end of September for sure. We got to get those vetches planted to give them the opportunity to germinate, get out of the ground, photosynthesize before they go dormant. And so we can get other things to work. We just have to start picking the right species at the right time. But I love getting the brassica plants out there. I think that's something that we don't raise enough of as a cash crop. And we need those out there because they unlock calcium and calcium unlock nitrogen. And that's just having that in there. Everybody knows the radish. I sell radishes. I like to promote other ones really though.
Well, and I think you're spot on, right? When we're talking with growers about mixes, we're always trying to talk about that diversity and mimic that historic site, like you said. But the piece of that diversity that's really important, especially for someone that wants a really Cadillac 30 species mix, is you've really got to be looking at your whole system. Crop rotation, what is your chemical system out there? Carryover, because there's so many things. We have growers that come in and they want to seed this week. And I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. We got to go back to what you did 4 months ago. And so it's really important. Growers could be now this winter, when it's ridiculously cold, thinking about if I want to do a cover crop, now seems like a good time to start having these conversations, especially around diversity, so we can be thinking about what's going to give you the best opportunity for success.
And there's great studies done out of Missouri about back in 15, 16, and 17 on the second year of a herbicide application, like in soybeans going back to corn. It doesn't hurt the corn crop, but it definitely dings some of these cover crops. And we got to look at that because the label is the rules. So we always got to follow the labels. You know, Stahl and I talk about this all the time. The label is the rules. The label's real. Absolutely. It's there for a couple of reasons. One, if you're a grazer, to make sure you don't get something in the system. The other thing is, if you're going to spend, let's say 15, 20, 25 bucks an acre, you want to get 15, 20, 25 bucks per acre seed out. You want to get your benefits out of it. Your herbicide was put there to do its job, terminate weeds. So if you put a broadleaf killer out there, it's going to try to kill the brassicas because it doesn't view it as, okay, I want to kill buttonweed, but boy, I want to leave that tuber crop alone. Well, it doesn't get that. It just says this all got to get rid of it. So it doesn't determine, you know, we can't say, okay, kill this one, don't kill this one. It goes, doesn't work that way. It all goes bye-bye because that's my job is I get rid of everything.
Yep.
So we got to have those conversations. Like you said, meetings, events right now, I tell guys, what did you spray last year? What did you spray the year before? As we do this earlier interseeding, which is part of the mixes that we're really putting together, where we're starting to work with the annual ryegrass and the brassicas into B2, B3 corn, then it's really critical is what was in the soybean program. How much atrazine have you used for the last 5 years? Because I'm telling you right now, that stuff carries a long, long, long tail into these mixes.
Yeah, just really valuable pieces so people can succeed and see the benefit of, like you were describing, that multi-root system and above ground as well. But that multi-root system is really where we're seeing the benefit.
And I don't want anybody spending money, Holly, and not getting benefit out of it. I don't want them, you know, you don't want to do that. You know, these are tax dollars that have been allocated to try to do certain things in the environment to really help and make the producer more profitable. Down the long term of this thing is you become more profitable as you have these practices, make these changes, and you become more profitable. But in the beginning, if you're using government dollars or your own dollars, it doesn't matter whose dollars you're using, dollars are dollars. You spend a buck, you want to get a buck's worth back. I'd like to see a couple bucks worth back. And a lot of times I think we can do it right. So you do see those benefits, but you don't want to just say, well, you know, it kind of worked. Yeah, it was okay. You know, it sort of grew. I don't like sort of grew. That's another word that just bugs me. No, I want to, you go, wow, we got a lot of growth out there. How are we going to do this next year? Well, now we work on next year's plan.
Yeah, I would agree. That's kind of the way we look at it too, right? It doesn't matter where the money's coming from, but we just want it to set you up for success when it comes to cover crop mixes.
Yep.
So a little question that comes to my mind as you were talking about the oats. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with a grower thinking about a cover crop the fall before an oat crop. And you kind of touched on it in conversations that we were having. Is there some data out there supporting putting a strong oat mix in the fall? It grows, it does its thing, it dies, and then you can come right in with your spring oat crop the next year with little to no consequence. Tell me about that. Can we unpack that question a little bit?
Yeah, so the thing we realized right away with oats when we started using them was we saw a lot of farms as we used the brassicas, and actually we saw this with the radishes to start with. We started seeing green streaks in the radishes very strong, and that meant there was heavy metals present. Where it came from, whatever, not, you know, fertilizer, whatever, it doesn't matter where it came from, but it's there. As we started to add oats, we saw this neutralization happening from this because it kind of scavenges up all that, it kind of purifies it out or whatever. It's a really good, you know, there's areas of the country they call it a purifier or a cleanser or whatever, and it really does a great job like that. So if you wanted to do a non-overwintering mix from like soybeans going back to oats, I would definitely get oats in that mix. I'd get radish in that mix. I'd get everything that's going to terminate out for you. You could even put the red clover in at that point, try to get that to establish and put the oats in. But the rest of it would be fine. I really think If you're going to oats, make sure you have oats the year before in your cover crop mix, because you're setting yourself up to have a better oat crop. So say there's a little herbicide floating out there. Well, the oats is going to scavenge it up and really kind of, take it out of the position to not hurt your oats the following year. So if the oats are getting sickly looking, it's really doing its job. It's got a belly ache. It's not doing good, but it's really doing a good job for you for next year. This is the part you have to look at. So I love oats in front of oats. I think that's the Canadians that I work with do that all the time. They put cereals in front of cereals constantly. And it's part of the factor of getting stuff cleaned up from like a canola crop or something like that, where they can get it taken care of. I think that's really good. Coming out of sweet corn, put an oat mix ahead of going back to these oats for this oat plant down in Alberta, which I think is a terrific thing that we're developing more of these markets so we can make farmers more profitable with the soil health conversation, then get the bigger diverse mixes in that.
Well, I feel better because that was the conversation that I had with the grower. Is we had talked about that, and I've just done a little bit of exploring and visiting with other growers as well that are doing that. And I think that's exactly it. Just coming up with a mix that we think is going to winter kill, or you reference the red clover, having that conversation of something that we know will still be there next year, but still just benefiting that oat crop and just getting people comfortable in that space and that it's looking different and just kind of that opportunity. So that's awesome. Good. Whew. The expert told me I did the right thing. I love it, TJ. That's awesome.
Yeah, you always do stuff right, Holly. I got no scare of you doing anything. You got it all in control.
No, I don't know about that, but so we're talking about these mixes, and I'm sure you get asked about as much as we do. Is there what's the easy button, or what's the standard mix? Can you just give me that? Is there one out there for diversification?
Yeah, yes and no. I'll do the perfect political answer.
Wait a minute. Do you work for the government?
Well, I have my moments. I get recruited occasionally, so absolutely. So I'll give you the best sales pitch I can. Absolutely, there's perfect mixes out there, but as you do this, there's always a but involved. You got to look at what your goals are next year and what time of year it is when you're doing this. You start getting way late in the fall. It's been wet. You haven't been able to do it. Okay, I want something that's going to work. Beans to corn to beans, cereal rye is a no-brainer. The thing we found out is with the camelina, we can take that way into November. As long as it gets in the ground, that will be there next spring. So it is a huge benefit is this winter camelina. We're starting to raise more of that as a company. It's going to be a staple in our Nebraska portfolio now. So there is an opportunity. But if guys are earlier in the year, they'll say, okay, I'm going to fly now. What should I do? Well, I always ask them, what are your goals for next year? What are you trying to accomplish with this? Are you just, and I always have to ask this, are you just taking the government money and you're going to do this and just do it? Yes. Okay. If that's, guys will say, I'm just going to try it. Okay. We're going to give you these three mixes, this three-way mix. We're going to put Nebraska in there. You're going to want it to overwinter. We'll use like a kale because it's going to live long in the fall. We'll put oats and rye. That is a great fall mix flowing on. We've done some drone work with that where we've cut the rates down, raised the Nebraska rate. So that one flies on great. High clearance machine that works from corn to beans. It works really well. From beans to corn is a little more sensitive as we go. There's some guys that really don't want anything to overwinter in front of their corn crop. And I get that 110%. It's just not ready. Or I'm going to strip till in fall. What should I do? Then once again, it goes back to that. Well, it all depends is what you want to do. So if you're going to strip till, I'll tell guys, if you're going to fly, green manure incorporation is something we've done for a long period of time. There's nothing wrong with it. Once again, if you don't want it to overwinter, we'll use oats and some of the Nebraska, like the kale or the cabbage or rapeseed, something like that. Rapeseed could overwinter, but not very successful. We put that in the mix. If you're going to incorporate it somehow. So I have guys right now that have built cedars that are putting 2 rows of covers and leaving spot strip till or no till. We're adding winter triticale for the overwintering in front of corn instead of winter rye in front of corn. I like trit. It's a hair more expensive, but we have not seen the negatives in front of corn like we have with rye, where it just gets to be such an aggressive growth. It's a slower break in dormancy. It's not as aggressive. We don't see I think Allison Roberts said it's Pythium and Allopath effect where it gives some seedling diseases. We don't see those things happening. So I think that's an easier one to work with in front of corn. If you drill it, put some vetch with it, put the winter camelina with it. If it's early enough, put the kale with it. If it's early enough, put the oats with it. So Is there a cookie cutter one for all this? Not really. And that's why we blend as we go. With my boys with a custom business they do, we blend it as we go, because it all is based off timing. It's all based off what person wants to do at the end of the year and next year. You know, to simplify it from beans to corn, you don't want overwintering oats and a couple brassicas flowing on early or by the middle of September. If you want something over winter, we put the winter triticale with it. From corn to beans, winter rye. If we're flying it early, we can put oats with that. We can put winter camelina. We can put kale. If we get late in the fall, winter rye, winter camelina drilled. And we've done that up until second week in November and had beautiful stands in the spring. But at that point, it's got to get in the ground. It's really got to get in the ground. Now, everybody will say, well, why are you still putting it out there? Anytime you have a corn crop, you have some loose nitrogen that you can scavenge up and hold. That winter rye will do a terrific job of that even in the spring. It'll hold it so it doesn't get somewhere else. It might not get all of it scavenged, but it'll hold enough where your beans will utilize that as they get going the next year. If not, if you put a cocktail mix in or an oat mix going back to corn, from beans to corn, you'll hold it for another year. So we just keep holding and recycling these nutrients as we go forwards. So is there a perfect mix? We kind of tweak it as we go. If you're coming out of small grains, canning acres, something like that, we can do a bigger diverse mix at that point of warm season, cool seasons, overwintering, non-overwintering. We can get a pretty good size mix going there. So as guys look at saying, I'm going to add these third crops, that is an awesome time to add more diversity into this. But we still can get diversity even way late in the fall. That had to be the best politician answer you've ever heard.
It's fantastic. You've got my vote because I love it. I think we can. We need to obviously programmatically sometimes look at the calendar and the dates of things, but we really do have choices and diversity when we're looking at things.
But I want to. We did probably 5 years ago.
Without a doubt.
We have way more than we did 5 years ago, and we've learned so much. The other part is whether you believe in climate change or aging the plant, whatever you think. Our falls have gotten longer the last few years. Now that could change next year too. You know, you never know. But we have gotten some longer falls. And that has given us a lot more time to establish covers after harvest.
Yeah, absolutely. A great benefit for cover crops. So I want to talk about your holding nutrients that you mentioned. So that's a conversation that often comes up that's all well, good and fine that rye is scavenging the leftover nitrogen in my soil from the corn crop. But when does it become available to me? You know, when we talk about it, like you just said, part of it is it's not leaving, right? So automatically a win. Soil and water, we're working in water quality and soil all the time, right? So back to your initial point, we want that raindrop stay where it lands. We also want those inputs to stay where they were placed. So what do you tell growers, or how do we explain in a way that can be quantifiable, which it's hard to quantify? Yeah, that rye was out there, tied up some nutrients. Some are available for the soybeans. Is there a standard 5%, 2% that we can take credit? I know it depends on growth, and there's all these, two classes, right? Back to the two class. But so let's unpack that a little bit.
So one thing we've started doing the last 4 years is I was at a conference in Wisconsin, and I was by, they do soil testing, and not Ward Labs. It's, I knew it. No, well, I use them too, but the first ones I started was biomass testing through, it'll come to me, I'll explain it. But we actually do clipper tests, and they used to do a lot of forage analysis. And then a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, they started soil health analysis because they were doing all these tests on forage and these alternative forages, and they're finding all this research, they're starting to look at it going, what else, what is this for the soil health properties? So we started doing those clipper tests. Now, the thing I found out the first year I did it 4 years ago, it's not a job for me. I'm lazy, I'm a hair overweight, and I really don't like bending down that much and putting that square out there. So interns or people just starting at the end, it's a great job for them because you got to go out and do a foot-by-foot square. You clipper test everything. You bring it back to your office. You weigh it. You put it into a bag, and you send it and it's a regular sandwich paper bag. And you send it off with a form of what's in there. They send you back a report very fast. I mean, it is quick. And it comes back as how much NPK micronutrients, carbon in that soil, and what the C/N ratio is. And it was really interesting. We saw anywhere from 40 pounds of N to 60 pounds in these biomass samples. We took them all the same day the first year. The rye was anywhere from 6 to 10 inches tall, so it wasn't huge rye. After corn, going to beans, you saw anywhere from 45 to 70 pounds of nitrogen that had a 13-to-1 C/N ratio. They told us that we would have that back in under 30 days, or 30 days to be available from the plant breakdown. This is just a top biomass. We never did root mass, which there's stuff in the root mass. I'm too lazy. I'm not digging them up, washing them off. That's a lot of extra work. And my boys get mad enough when I make them do this to start with because they really think it's a waste of time. But I take it out to guys and say, okay, here's what you have available. The other thing is the P&K that we saw that was there was unbelievable. How much sulfur was there, how much micronutrients were there in that biomass that will be converted back to plant material for the next year to be able to use it. So it quantified the data. Now, I presented it to Liz Haney one day. Liz and I sat down and looked at the information, and she says, out of that 70 pounds of nitrogen, because I would say during that soybean growing season, you'll get 25 to 30 pounds of that the first year. But you've held it in a stable form that will be, if you put it under the cover out there after the soybeans, it will be there for the crop next year also. Should we cut those numbers out? I don't think so yet. I would not cut your fertility program yet. And here's why. I have 3-4 growers that have not cut their fertility programs at all. They've stayed with the same thing in the strip till, but they've added the covers. They have seen anywhere from 10 to 15% increase in yield on a lot of acres because this extra available nutrients that plant is healthy and it's sucking that up and making more yield. I mean, it's making them dollars. So the dollars they spent are staying where they belong, and it's going to that cash crop. I have other growers that are cutting 10% of their fertility programs out and keeping the same yield. But using this lab, and gosh, it's terrible. And they were a forage lab, and now they do a soil health test. It's really a good one for people to utilize. Central Soda Co-op uses a lot of that up there in your area, north of you. They're going out and do biomass testing all spring long to get a baseline of what is actually here. And Amy Roebuck's got some big numbers after Penpack being applied of 200 and some pounds of nitrogen in that biomass of an 8-inch cover crop. Now that's N that would have went somewhere else because it was in a leachable form. Now it's staying where it belongs. Now I'm not telling anybody to cut their whole N program. No. You got to look at it and say, I might try some strips of cutting back 20%. Maybe I do a 10-acre block of cut back 10% or something. Do R&D on your farm with these numbers too. But this gives you a baseline number to say there is actually something in this biomass. We did biomass samples several years ago with my uncle, and we did the root mass and everything, and we saw roughly the same numbers there. Annual ryegrass, we had overwintering annual ryegrass from our interseeding in beans or corn going to beans. We saw 50 pounds of nitrogen there. P&K about the same. But the C/N ratios, that's the thing you have to look at is how low is that C/N ratio? And this stuff's under 20. So it is going to break down and get back to the plant.
Yeah, I think the forage analysis is something that we explore, but then it's just like you said, one more labor step, one more piece. But really, that's valuable data for a grower to have and to understand because for your example, it's either maybe reducing input costs if that's what you're exploring or higher yield. Either way, I think it's a win-win for the grower. And so that's something definitely we encourage people to think about doing. And maybe, like you said, you just got to find the right laborer to run out and do that for you. So
yeah, I mean, if you got a bunch of interns running around, they want something to do, it's a great job to keep them busy for a couple of days. Trust me, it will keep your day all day long busy because you're out there clipper testing, then you kind of come back and weigh it. Yeah, well, it's very, very, but the data you get back from it, to me, every grower should go out and do a couple spots on a field just to say, okay, first of all, peace of mind. So I put actually numbers to that. So I wrote the numbers down on one of the pieces of paper. I showed it at a meeting one time, and it was the NP and K, and I priced it off, the co-op price sheet, my local co-op. What's this cost? It was $135 worth of nutrients that were there that have been scavenged up in that biomass. Okay, so it's $135 worth of nutrients that you paid for that you did not use yet because it was there. Obviously, your crop didn't use it. So you did not lose that. So when you spent $40 on a cover crop mix between that and application, well, for $135 return off $40, water quality, there was programs going on a few years ago talking about putting tile line monitors in to show that we're not getting the stuff in the water where we don't want it. If you could show those numbers and go to the Friends of Mississippi and say, what's this worth? I'm keeping it on my farm, but what's it worth to you so it doesn't go to the Gulf? Say they paid you half that money. You're still positive of this whole thing. But in your mind, as a grower, you spent $40 for between application and seed, maybe $35, and this is what you got back out of that. This is what it gave you. And I think those are things we really have to explore with growers and say, okay, I know you're spending money, either out of your pocket or mine, but here's what you got back. And here's what it's going to do for you going forwards. And I think that is something we need to do more. It's, like I said, it stinks because, man, it's a lot of work. But even if you just did a couple farms for each grower to say, look, you're spending this money, but this is what you're getting back. Now let's monitor it and show how more profitable you are going forwards.
Yep. No, I definitely think there's value in that data, and just knowledge is power. So the more we know, the better informed the decision the growers can make. And it's back to that, circling back to mix and thinking about the importance of the diversification to improve your soil health, if that's the jargon you're going to use, or just improve soil function as well, right? So we were just talking about that forage above ground and whether you choose to do above ground values and below. But I really want to kind of go down that rabbit hole. You touched on it with the flax, being a host for the mycorrhizae. And there's so much happening beneath that soil profile with diversity. We don't know and we don't understand. And I know we're exploring it in many different ways, but even just that biomass, if that's telling you what's above ground, how do we get an idea of what's below ground? Do you have experience with that or anything that we could share to think about?
So I think one test, and I know it gets a black eye from a lot of people, but I really believe after working with Heaney's and Russell Hendrick and these guys with the Soil Health Academy and stuff, it's a good matrix to look at for numbers. So I have a farm that we took over 3 years ago, and this is probably the best story I tell. It was a gravel pit. They seeded it down to grass 25 years ago and hadn't touched it. There's still some gravel out there. So a company came along and said to the guy, take it out of CRP. We're going to take the gravel off. Well, they didn't. They didn't need it. And it isn't that great of gravel anyways. So he calls me because you want to farm this. Well, nobody fights me over this farm. There's nobody lining up to run this farm. I was not in a bidding war. He said, what will you give us? And I said, what do you want for it? He goes, no, what do you give us? And I said, well, I'll give you this for the first 3 years. Let's see what we can do. So I went in and we did a full Haney test on it. Active carbon was almost zero. Soil life was almost zero. Nitrogen was almost zero. There's a little bit there. Now this has just been grass for stagnant grass for 25 years. The numbers were horrible. So we went into a very aggressive forage program the first year. I had a guy come out and put a diverse mix out there. We plowed. I forgot how much I hated plowing until I plowed 25 acres and realized, I'm sorry. I've been a no-till, rich-till guy for a long time, and I'm going back and forth going, this is why we quit doing this. This is a lot of work in a small swath, and I'm like, just kind of, but we got it done, leveled it off, seeded it down. Took 2 4-H cuts and cutting off it that year, and then we just mowed it the last time just to mulch it in. The next year I was going to go back to beans, and it's like, you know what? I did the Haney test again. Numbers hadn't improved much. So we did 1 more year of forage, and that guy only took 1 cutting that year. Then we just mowed it off. Then we went to camelina that fall into last spring, and it failed. It froze off because we got that cold snap in April and it froze it off. We did a Haney test on it last summer, which was kind of the wrong time to do it, but we wanted to see what we'd done. We had 40 pounds of active nitrogen there now after what we'd done. We had carbon, we had soil. So we had biology starting and working for us. I think that gives us the profile of what our soil's doing underneath. We got, and you can, Midwest labs have a test this way. A lot of them have, but I think something you got to get a baseline to say, where's my soil at? And when I start down this journey, how have I increased it? Because a tablespoon of soil has so much active life in it. We have no understanding. I am no scientist by any means, but I can visually go by and see what's going on. I get these numbers and it gives me a guide. It's not a recommendation for nutrients. I don't use it that way. I use it as a guide. Have I improved the life of my soil? And I think each university, I've talked to Anna Cates about this, I've talked to other people at the U, I think all of them are looking at what matrix could we use to say, what is it doing down there? What are we getting out of this? What are we getting out of the extra roots? Oregon State is working for us right now out in Oregon, because that's where my company's based out, to start doing X-ray trials of every brassica. What does that root system do in the soil? What is it? Does it unlock calcium? If it unlocks calcium, it unlocks nitrogen. When does that start? Is it from the time it comes out, or does it have to be 3 inches long? Once we understand that, we'll understand how much growth we need to get to really make it active. But I think to start with, Holly, is I think the Haney test is a really good snapshot of what's actually going on out there. And then I tell people, go to a fence line and grab that soil and send it in and just see what's going on there. Or go in the woods and get a test and say, what's going on here, and compare it to what you've done on your crop ground. Because not that we've abused our crop ground, we've taken really good care of it, but we're maybe lacking in a few points or got some nutrients tied up that this might show us, and you say, okay, I've added this now I'm unlocking this, and now I'm seeing the benefits of it. But I think that's one that can give us some good baselines to look at. And there's other companies that have the same thing. Find one you're comfortable with. Learn, understand how to read that test on your farm, and then go from there.
I would agree that baseline is something that, like you said, do it once every 3 years or every 5 years or whatever that looks like. But it's just one more piece of information that you can use. And for some reason, if you are soil testing every year and you decide to do a Haney that year, it does have some general recommendations on there if you are comfortable with kind of playing with your own fertilizer recommendations. So it's all about balancing that cost to benefit ratio too. And there is a lot of benefit we've seen in just having a little bit of knowledge from that Haney, and just over time watching it change. We've had growers that have seen significant changes, just like you shared with that test result. So there isn't, that's the piece, like there's not a one size fits all for any of this.
And I tell guys, if you don't want to do that, as you start down this, one thing that can be really helpful, everybody has yield map data. Most guys have back at least 5 years, if not 10 years back. Okay, so if you have it 10 years back, overlay your farms and look and say, this area here, man, it seems like we're always struggling here. We're struggling here. We'll put more tile in. We've done this and this. We're just not doing what this piece does over here. This. I tell everybody, as you start down this path, within 3 to 5 years, those areas will start to physically shrink. You'll see it on your yield map data. You'll say, man, during the drought, I used to raise 30 bushel beans, and I did 55 in the drought this year. Something's happening there. One guy told me, he goes, if I see that, I don't care for you to explain anything to me. I saw it. That's all I need to do. I need to see those areas shrink. If I can see them shrink, I'm good. You don't have to explain the science to me, because he said, I probably don't get it anyways. So he just kept saying, what do you do? So I kept saying, well, if your headlands, if you can increase your headlands by 25% production, guy who runs 1,000 acres has 40 acres of headlands. If he can increase that, that's going to make his whole farm average better. If he takes those drowned out spots and get them to alleviate somewhat where it's not drowning out as often, the ponding isn't happening. If you can shrink those areas, and that's something you can see with your yield mapping in your own office, on your own, without talking to anybody else. You can physically see that. Then if you want to tie the testing in with it, you can learn from that. So, okay, I tested this area, it was this. Now I'm seeing the yield increase, and I'm seeing this change. So you can start to educate yourself some on, oh, this is actually working. And that money I'm giving TJ every year is actually doing something. I'm actually seeing that this is working. And then I don't have to argue as much when I do the next thing. It's just like, well, want to try something else? Yeah. What's the next thing we should do? So guys get excited. But it takes 3 to 5 years to really see this transformation to really start. Rented land is always a conversation. I'm renting a farm. It's a 3-year rental agreement. I've told guys, let me go to your landlord with you, and I'll explain that you're trying to protect their asset to the best of your ability. Better than you've been doing a great job, but you're trying to do even better for them now. You're trying to do more things for them. And down in Iowa, I got some farms where the landlords are, they're participating in this with them. They want to see it done. They want to quit seeing the chocolate milk when the rain happens. They want to see the ditch quit being full of stalks. They want to quit seeing the water running down off the field, flowing off, and all of a sudden having a gully there that they know they lost soil. And when land's being competed at $15,000 to $20,000 an acre, you just don't want to float away.
Oh. I think that's a really important piece that we always try to bring into the conversation as well is the owner. A lot of the cropland in Renville County is not operated by the owner. And that's a really important piece to bring them along. And that's something that we always offer too, right? Do you want us to have a conversation with the landlord? Let's all go together, right? So we're all on the same page,
Yep.
hop on a Teams or whatever that is if they're out of state, because there is a lot of value in them understanding that investment improvement by that diversity of cover crops or just reduced tillage, soil health, whatever that transition looks like. There's a lot of value in understanding.
Well, I keep asking, and I've done this because I've done meetings where it's been for land management groups where they've just had me come talk to landowners. And I said, do you want a depleted asset or do you want an appreciated asset? Because a depleted asset at some point in time will not make you the money that it could be making you. And, you look at every city, municipality around the area have all expanded into farm fields that 20 years ago were farming, 10 years ago, 5 years ago were farming. And now I just came back from Des Moines from the farm show. My wife commented, she goes, look at this. Look how far the developments are going in Des Moines. That was all prime ground at one time. Now it's golf courses and houses. Well, we're not farming that anymore. We're done with that. We can't go and farm around the house. They get pretty, irritated when you pick corn in the middle of the night. They get mad enough when the guy's out in the field doing it. So, we don't have those spots. So the ground we have to protect and take care of. And I think that's the long term of this is protecting that asset. We've been blessed with three things in this country: really good soil, clean water, and producers that take care of it. And we're just trying to keep protecting the assets so everybody keeps making money. And we can still farm the land to farm.
Yeah, they're not making any more land. So
Nope.
gotta take care of with what we got. And I think that's what we're really seeing with this, that growers are really, they have been, like you said, it's not that there was any lack of trying. It's just, we know so much more. And as you just said, you guys are working with universities and we are working with the U on a study that's also looking at N values in tillage, reduced till, no till, long-term, short-term systems. And so that's exactly it. We're just gathering more data and more information. It's just going to help inform all these decisions.
Because, each set of growers will go to a different source to learn.
Yeah.
Some will come talk to you guys. Some will call me. Some will go to university dads. Some will go to the Minnesota Soil Health Coalition. Some will go to the big soil health events. Everybody's got a different area they're going to learn from. Our message has to be the same through all the systems, that this is what we need to do and this is what we're trying to do for you. And if it comes the same from everybody, for the most part, there'll be little tweaks and changes there occasionally, but we need to be the same message. This is what we're all trying to accomplish. And it all goes back to one thing. It all goes back to the water issue. I mean, This really took off when the Des Moines Water Works sued those farm groups for nitrate coming into the Des Moines River. It opened our eyes. We had an idea was happening. It opened our eyes that there was a lot of it happening. So how do we protect our assets? When it's fertilizer, we get fertilizer. Let's keep it where it belongs all the time.
Yeah. Well, and in Minnesota, we're really fortunate because we've got the Land and Water Legacy Sales Tax Amendment that brings a lot of money into the research and into ag to support these practices. And states around us that don't have it don't have this level of support that we have. So Minnesota farmers are really in a great position to have that support and to continue to learn.
Right. And I think that's part of it is we all, and I go to events, every time I go to an event, Holly, I always feel I learned something from somebody. Or somebody will say something, I'll say, ooh, what if I can make that work somewhere? Nice, my little gears start spinning, and Brad Hagan told me one time, he goes, you can just see the smoke coming out of your ears, what are you thinking? I said, I got a brain thing going here right now, give me a second, I got to process for a while, I'm scheming on something, but it's like, okay, how are we going to make this work so the growers are satisfied, the landowners are satisfied, and the American public is satisfied?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a heavy lift.
Oh, it is. But I got big shoulders.
Same. And it's fun. It's a fun opportunity and challenge to have those conversations. It really is.
Yep.
So tell me, the last question, what is your favorite diverse mix and why?
So, we'll give a little part here with this. All right. So if we're coming out of a small grain or a canning acres or something like that, I love to get 7, 8, maybe up to 10 things out there. So I love to get a couple brassicas. I still use radish at that point. And the reason I do, I'll put like half a pound out there. I love to go out and dig radishes with producers and show that every time that tuber kink, that's a compaction layer that you're fighting through. And it's really a great visual. But I always try to get a couple brassicas in it. I always try to get a summer grass, like a sorghum sedan grass. And I've started to use more of the BMR versions because they digest really fast in the ruminant. They'll digest really fast in the soil. So I try to get them out there, buckwheat. And then I try to get like the cool seasons, oats, barley. If they want overwintering, winter rye in front of beans is my go-to every time. It just works. It's simple. It's easy. Nuclear war breaks out and winter rye is there next year. That and hostas, because I can't kill a hosta. And I can kill things when I want it, but I can't get rid of them hostas around my house. I've done everything under the sun to get rid of those things. They'll be there. So that's been a really nice one to work with. I don't, I got guys calling me all the time, we should put 30 things in. I'll say, you know what, let's start you here. If you want to do 30 down the road, let's go for it. I like to get the flax in the mix. In those summer mixes or the early fall mixes, I'll get flax out there because it goes long in the fall. If you're going from getting in the fall, if we're going to fly on or aerial apply something, then I'll cut it down to 3, and I try to get oats in them every time for flying them on. And then whatever cereal you want. If it's corn or beans, we use the rye or the triticale. If we're going early, we try to get another brassica like a kale in besides the winter camelina. If we're going early season, and we didn't hit on this yet, but V2, V3, and we're working on this a lot more. Actually, my boys got the MDA grant. We're going to build another interseeder where we're wide dropping nitrogen at the same time of seed and cover crops. We're doing 2 things. We use the annual ryegrass at that point, and that works really well for us because it overwinters. But we're cutting the rate down. We used to use a very high rate of that. We're going on to 5 to 7 pounds, maybe 10 pounds, going high brassicas, getting that to grow all summer long. The ryegrass goes dormant. It's there in the fall. You could graze it. It's a great cover crop. It's breaking up compaction, sucking up nutrients. The annual ryegrass might overwinter. It might not. If it doesn't, it terminates itself, and not you terminate it in spring when you plant your beans. So I like the mixes. We got to get grasses in it, but we got to get the brassicas out there also. Legume wise, if you're coming out of an early season, I use a lot more peas and vetch over like red clover. I haven't had the best luck with red clover getting it established. It's a small seed. It doesn't like a lot of competition. But 410 forage peas, those things will grow way late in the fall. They're easy to seed. You incorporate them. I've used them till the middle of September after silage acres and got them to grow for 45, 50 days and had nice biomass on top. So peas, a common vetch, which is a normal vetch that doesn't overwinter. If you can get that out there in September, like after early soybeans, after early corn silage, get that in the mix. If you're going to get late in the fall, you're going in October. Winter rye, winter camelina in front of beans, winter trip, winter camelina, and beans going to corn. That finishes out the year right there. In our NRCS programs, we go to till November 1 with all those mixes. So kind of a loaded question a little bit because it depends what we're doing. But earlier, we can get more things in there. But I'm not a massive fan of 30 things yet. I mean, I'd probably get to be a massive fan. And I'm a seed guy. I should be selling all this crap to you and say, oh, yeah, whatever. But I want to see success. I want to see bang for the buck. I want you to have, if we get too big a biomass in the summer or late fall or early fall, you got to contend with that next spring. That can be an issue. Or I've had guys call me and say, now how am I strip tilling through this disaster? How am I doing that? Because now I got this shank and it's dragging. It looks like a dump rake out there. My strip till guy is pissed off at me, or pardon my language, mad at me right now because he's trying to get through this, or I'm trying to pull an anhydrous bar through it. Ooh, well, you didn't tell me you were going to do that. Once that goes back to the conversation of what are you doing this fall with this?
Yep.
I got some guys that'll do that big mix and they'll vertical till it in, or they'll lightly disc it in. It's green manure. I'm not opposed. I'm not a purist to say you can't do it, but I always think you're missing a little bit of the puzzle if you don't let some of it go till spring.
Yeah.
But if you're not comfortable, it's a great way to get a lot of nutrients incorporated in the soil too in the fall.
Yeah.
So I'm not a purist to say you got to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, you're wrong. No, it's got to fit your operation. You got to feel comfortable. You got to sleep at night. I don't sleep at night because I have other issues, but you got to sleep at night. I'm up half the night scheming this stuff, but you got to sleep at night. So I know it's kind of a round robin to say that I like diversity all the time, though, if I can get it. And I have stuff that can go till the middle of November and still get diversity.
Yep. Well, and I think on diversity, we sometimes try to tell producers to not put that much pressure on themselves because, yeah, we want diversity all the time, but maybe this year we don't have diversity just because of timing or other things like you just said, or you've got someone coming in to do some custom work, whatever that looks like. Well, then let's try next year, right? It shouldn't be a one and done and just say, I'm going to do cereal rye because I've done cereal rye for the last 5 years and it's been fine, right? we're back to what you said earlier in the conversation, that now we've just created a monoculture of a different crop in that system by not creating that disturbance or that change in that system. And so, farming is a long game, not a short game. And so if we really can be thinking about that, this might not be the year for a really diverse mix, but maybe it's a 2 species. And then we just kind of expand. We want it to be a gateway, right? We want you to try a 2 species mix and see the benefit in your above ground biomass, or if you send off a sample, and then maybe you'll want to try more and more. So that's the hope.
And something that we're working on going forwards, we always got to talk about where we're trying to develop this. So we're doing more drone work. And we first started with the drones, they aren't really big and they couldn't hunt a lot of seed. So we really tweaked this mix down to going like a heavy rate of brassica and a little bit of oats. We're using some ryegrass early at this point. So we're starting to tweak this down where they can fly 8 to 10 acres on a fill and getting some really good success out of this. So we're getting a nice biomass in the fall. We're getting multi-roots out there. We're getting a different way of doing it. I got one guy that works with the plane guy. He does the headlands with the drones. He does the corners where the plane can't get in. He does the short rounds. The plane buzzes the big field and he buzzes the little stuff.
Okay.
Working together, saying, okay, this is my niche. This is yours. You can cover the big acres fast, but all this corner stuff that you're trying to diddle around and dive bomb into that you can't get into, I can fly that with my drone. I can buzz around that. I buzz around that waterway that you were always like, I can't get seed in there. I can fly all that for you. So I think that's where we start to look at these drone mixes and say, could we go higher of this, lower of this, get a nice establishment? And you go back to, we talk about carbon footprint, that becomes part of the conversation. A carbon footprint of a semi-load of rye is kind of high. A carbon footprint of a multi-mix of a lot of brassica and a little bit of grass, if I can have a semi-load cover 3,000 acres versus 800, my carbon footprint is lower in this cover crop business too. And at some point that will come out of what is our cover crop, what is our carbon footprint in the cover crop world. We're trying to help with it, but we do have a footprint. And I'm very conscious of that as something we got to develop going forward. We have to account ourselves of what is our carbon footprint.
Yeah, you always got to pay the piper at some point, right?
Yep. So, but I think getting those diverse mixes going, that mix we're working with now and we're tweaking it around, it's really been fairly successful. It's really kind of an interesting mix. We've used 3 brassicas. We've actually used some clover at that point that's kind of worked out, but we cut the grass way down. So it's like 8-10 pounds of oats.
Yeah, get across a lot of acres quick.
Yep. Those drones can fly for about 10 acres on a battery life. And then they got to land in, so you might as well fill them with seed and send them back out. So
right. Yeah, you're paying somebody to stand there and fill it, so you might as well have them fill it.
Yep. So I think we're really trying to try a lot of different things to get that diversity package out there somehow for growers.
So I want to be respectful of your time. I took way more already than I was going to, but do you have any closing remarks that we didn't cover today that you really wanted the public to hear?
So one thing is, and you hit on it really well, is guys didn't do stuff this year. We got really dry. It was windy. They didn't do things. You know what? I get that. We do custom work here. My boys do. We had guys just say, I don't want to do it this year. It's just so dry. So we didn't. That doesn't mean you're done. So I always tell everybody, we always have a window. We've frost seeded stuff in the past. We've gone out in April and put on oats and red clover and some radishes and some rapeseed. We've done ryegrass that way and got a really nice cover growing, burned it down, planted into it. And everybody said the same thing. It was so tilty when I planted into it. So there's never a time we can't do something. We just sometimes choose not to do something. And that's fine. If it's scaring you and bugging you, maybe don't jump in. Don't do every acre every year. But like you said, if we can try to get the acres covered and then start doing the biomass testing for yourself and say, okay, here's what I have. Now I'm going to take this piece here. I'm going to try to reduce some rates of fertilizer just to see on my farm, does it work? Educate yourself. Go to meetings. The only when you go to meetings, I tell everybody, don't take every session every time in because you'll walk out there and go, I'm more confused than when I got here. Pick what you want to hear. Network with growers that are doing it. Get a confidence level built up with the NRCS, SWCD, seed providers, custom people. Get a good feel for everybody, and then start down this path. Everybody can do this. We are in ag. We're the most super intelligent people on the face of the planet. If somebody doesn't make a piece of equipment, we'll make it ourselves. If somebody doesn't understand a seed mix, we'll figure it out ourselves. but we have a lot of people that have already made errors and mistakes that are in this space. Work with us and we'll walk you through it. And it's going to be a profit center for you as a producer down the road.
That's perfect. I couldn't say anything better to that. That's exactly what we're here for. And we just want people to continue to succeed. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we don't, like I said, I don't want somebody to buy seed and it doesn't work. I don't want people to feel that I ripped them off. I'm not that person. I'm never going to be that person. I want you to exceed 100%. I want acres covered. I want to see the federal and state government say, hey, you guys are doing a great job. No more rules and regulations about this. You got it all covered. Because the flip side of that, if it doesn't happen, there's already things happening in the state of Minnesota that are rules and regulations that could come down. The nitrogen management in the eastern part of the state, those guys, 7 years ago, oh, this will never happen. And now they're governed on it. We want to be proactive, not reactive, as much as possible.
That's perfect. Well said. Well, TJ, thanks again so much for your time today. I really appreciated our visit. And thanks for joining us on the Armored Soil podcast.
Well, I really appreciate you letting me do this, Holly. I know sometimes it's tough when government has to let the industry come in and talk because we don't want to make it a sales pitch, but we try to make it really educational first, because education is the most important piece in our country is education. Absolutely. I really appreciate you guys, what you do at the county levels. I've worked in your space with you guys enough. If I had to do your job all day long, I'd probably drink more than I do as it is. So you do a great job. I really appreciate all the counties I get to work with in Minnesota.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we really try. We appreciate that.
Yep, you guys do a great job. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.